in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What's a pity? Tomorrow never certain. What was behind the curtain? The face of evil lurking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come get it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come get it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ike. Let's get one thing out of the way. Go ahead and click that like button. Click the subscribe button if you have not already. Okay? And click that bell button. Click it twice. Welcome to Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. Last week, we talked about ethnic political interests and ethnic representation. We said, hey, do ADOS faces mean ADOS representation? Okay? What does it mean to have symbolic representation in the Congress, for example? If I send 5 more black faces there, does it mean I have 5 more units of black representation? Well, obviously, no. But what are even the ethnic interests, right? I think that Dr. Thur helped us break down, at least through his lens, what the interests would be. Okay, he mentioned, for example, Roe v. Wade, insofar as there is an overrepresentation of black terminated pregnancies. Let's put it that way, right? Which leads to suppression of the population and suppression of the political power. Therefore, that is a big concern. And then you're also mentioning Title IX, which makes it such that the benefits of affirmative action are skewed away from the originally intended beneficiaries, black men. Okay, and then also the understanding that one should not be under the assumption that racial integrationists are correct. So don't just assume that when you get the first black Supreme Court justice, the first black president, the first black this or that, this kind of symbolic representation, don't assume that A, it means that the policies are actually going to be pushed through, or that B, it is actually even a good or meaningful thing. So that is the program. Today we're going to go in a direction that says, hey, how does one, actually go about making these policies of, let's say, helping the poor, or getting the kinds of things that getting the kinds of outcomes Dr. Thunder elucidated last week? How does one go about doing that? Okay, is it through government? How come we'll keep getting this pattern that the poor do not benefit from the government programs? And well, first of all, how you doing, Dr. Thunder? How's it going?
Doing all right. Doing all right, man.
All right is
doing all right.
All right is good enough. That's all you need.
That's right. That's right. I'm still alive.
There you go. That's way more than what you need. So
that's right.
Now let's start from somewhere, okay? Because today we're going to continue reviewing a video from Glenn Lowry, professor of economics at Brown University. A video from him talking about a guy who is in the trenches when it comes to helping out the poor, being there, working in the prisons, working with the churches, being on the ground, being an activist, being that whole scene, right? And him talking about the things that he's kind of disillusioned with, and how the money tends to come in, but it only benefits a certain cohort of the people who run the programs, right? These people who get their degrees in public policy and go into these government jobs and get the salaries are the people really benefiting from the government programs, not the poor, if you will.
Yeah.
But let's start here real quick before we even play the video. Okay, so we know about efficiency of charities, for example, input versus output. If you're gonna, obviously, you give a charity $100, doesn't mean $100 is going to go to the person being helped. You hope you get you want to get the biggest bang for your buck. You want the most efficient stuff. You want to get $90, $80, something, a reasonable amount, right? But do we expect the government to be more efficient? Because we know some charities are not very efficient, right? You have a large bureaucracy. When we go about agitating for government solutions, or shall we say political solutions to problems, when we go about agitating for political solutions to problems, is it because we really think that the government is more efficient, or is it about using government coercion and to satisfy ourselves? Right? Is it really because we? Okay, cool. Well, how?
All right,
explain
it's
yourself.
been a great show. It's been a great show. See you.
Explain yourself, sir. How is it the case? Okay, because we're saying basically that look, government coercion looks like it's doing something. It takes money from people here, it puts it and it funnels it over there. Even though we don't care to look very carefully what comes out on the other side, right? But we feel happy that we've mobilized something, that we've agitated for something, that we're getting something signed into law. But we know that even private organizations that try to be very efficient, there's still a lot of gaps between, shall we say, the input versus the output, and we know government is notorious for this. So why do we keep playing this game? Or any thoughts about this, sir?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of money to be made. That's the short answer. And unfortunately, we have and there's different sort of classifications of melanated people, right? You have the FBAs, foundational Black Americans, and really ADOS is intended to be FBA, but then I think certain folks started using ADOS to include folks from other places that endured the sort of slave trade within the same area. So like Jamaica, for instance. And so then folks thought that FBA was a needed term. There is the sense that in many ways, many of us melanated folks of African descent from the diaspora, the African diaspora, there are things in common, but there's also quite a few differences, and so I'm gonna kind of group us together right now for my comments, but then I'm going to separate us because I think you will understand a little bit better the particular kinds of issues that we face and how they have been sort of cultivated by the government. So as far as trying to get us to vote, I think that the Democrats, they don't care if we are from here or from there. They just, hey, a black vote's a black vote. They have started to use this black term in an ambiguous way. It used to mean very specifically, it meant and was always used to talk about FBA, Foundational Black Americans. But now they're using it to sort of, include other folks that have sort of been grafted into the.
Okay, so let me slow down here, because this is something I also heard from A. Hill last time, or within the last week and a half, talking about this kind of eroding of the Black identity. Black in America meaning African American ADOS, right? That's what that means in America, right?
FBA, right?
Outside America, Black could mean just this color of the skin, and then it's all kinds of stuff, right? So, but the eroding of that, replacing it with African and any other kind of person who is Black, for example, and as long as that box gets checked, then this particular group is getting diluted. Now, besides the obvious reasons of, well, I just want more people and I want to be able to play that tune of I'm representing the ethnic peoples or the minorities or whatever, because that's my particular card, right? As a Democrat, let's say, right? As a Democratic politician, I want to be for the downtrodden, for the minorities and such. So besides the fact that I am just collecting these numbers, right? Is there any other reason why I would want to dilute is there something sinister going on here in terms of what you just said about the dilution? Or is it just, hey, I just want numbers, bro?
I think that I don't know how much like actual like nefarious, actors there actually are. I think most of the stuff that happens to the Black community is one based on lazy stuff. So like, for instance, like, Republicans don't even come to the Black community, so there's like a lazy kind of, should I actually put the effort in? They're kind of sold out to the Democrats. There's that, and just bad ideas that instead of, so in Larry Sharp makes a really good point. He says once the government uses force, then the only the only option that they have is to double down. They can't use force. Here, you do this, or I'm going to throw you in jail, or you do this, whatever. Oh, you know what? We were wrong. No, they're not going to do that, because then they're going to be on the hook for all the people that they locked up. They're going to be on the hook for, and they're going to have a lot of egg on their face, and then it's going to be harder for people to trust them. So what the government does is whenever it uses force, when it is been found out to be wrong, it just doubles down. Well, you didn't give me as much money as we wanted. You didn't allow us to do it the way we wanted to do it. They start this kind of conversation. Yeah. So that, at this point, I'm not sure what I don't remember what the question, the root question was, because now I'm out here in the middle of the of the lake.
You got carried away with that one there. But no, it was just a simple idea before we start reviewing this video again, or continuing where we were in this video, that look, we're saying, hey, I'm going to tell you, or we're going to demonstrate, we're going to discuss, we're going to elucidate upon this hypothesis here, test this hypothesis that indeed the government programs do not help the poor, okay? And that there is a pattern whereby government programs don't help the intended beneficiaries. Last week, we talked about it, right? We talked about affirmative action intended for Black men, not necessarily, but that's not whom it helps. That's not what the numbers say, and so on and so forth. Then when it comes to this government program thing, okay, especially when it comes to helping the poor, we have a very clear understanding of how this works, because we know charity, we understand community service in churches and stuff like that, trying to help. So we understand the inefficiencies of that. And then understanding how government is corrupt and how there's a lot of money in there and all these other kinds of things. Why do we still get all bogged down with that thing? Well, that was the kind of thing we were just saying as a premise before we get into really seeing other reasons why government programs don't help the poor. The first reason is massive inefficiency, which is not anything to be surprised about, right? So on that end, we're going to continue here with this video, and the gentleman here and his story in the trenches, working with the people. Let's go.
As a consequence, I got involved, finished undergraduate school, and working in a juvenile jail, locked behind 3 doors, with 65 juveniles in there, from gang murder to truancy.
So working at a juvenile jail, getting his hands dirty, rubber meets the road, that kind of guy, right? Versus the bureaucrat in the street, or even the protester in the street, or the Twitterverse activist, right? So this is his life, his perspective, and what he thinks works and doesn't work.
But they were the same kids I grew up with. And so I kind of fell in love and had a kind of burning bush experience. 6 of those boys I would have adopted if I had the means to do so. So they were there because of their circumstance, but there were some there because of their values. So long story short, I graduated, got involved in master's in social work, and then I went to work in the foster care system and saw how that system was destroying children. Got involved in the civil rights movement, having led demonstrations in Westchester, Pennsylvania, the home of Bayard Rustin. But in doing so, I left the movement, man, very disappointed following the death.
Disappointed in the foster care system. Disappointed in the civil rights system. Okay, let's go.
Of Dr. King, when I realized that a lot of people who suffered most didn't benefit from the change, that low-income Blacks were used as the bait for attracting programs and relief. But when the benefits came, it went to middle-class Blacks like myself. And
okay, cool. So
I got to say something, man.
Go ahead. Say something.
Okay. This bait and switch, this is part of that. You've heard me say, why do you need to change the playbook? The playbook is highly effective. Just run the ball up the middle. And, Black folks, we'll keep swallowing it, and they'll keep gashing us. And, by the end of the game, it'll be 75-0 or whatever. No need to change the playbook, right? So the playbook, he just said what it is. It is using low income folks as the rationale for, bringing this money in, and then do the bait and switch. Then actually the people that actually get the money are not the people that you could actually justify raising the money for.
Okay, so let me.
They did the same thing. They did the same thing with the BLM has done the same thing, for instance.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
So and let me kind of say something here, because I want to kind of maybe perhaps through my imagination bring the thing to life, because we all know how this thing tends to happen. Okay, in the sense that, ladies and gentlemen, some of you went to college. And some of the people who went there to study maybe criminal justice, public policy, maybe some MBA type people, right? We know the kind of people that they are. Okay. No shade to them. Okay. But we know who those people are. Okay. And then they end up working in some municipality somewhere, and they kind of get into the bureaucracy, into the bureaucratic machines. Okay. And maybe one of them stays outside, plays local politics, and even goes into Congress, right? We know that crowd. Okay. Those people. Now, how are they in any way competent, with money, large organizations, doing anything other than just continuing to push the more and more button on the bureaucracy, right? Imagine these people get money. In other words, they don't even have to be, they're mainly incompetent. Number one is the whole story of me just telling you, imagine those people, right? They're mainly kind of incompetent, run-of-the-mill, above average, your regular above average IQ person, okay, whom is still an idiot, right?
Right.
So those people out there just they think that they're doing good when let's increase the budget of this, and then we'll hire more people here, and we'll take these many trips, and we'll open this other office. You can just see how the thing just metastasizes from this same crew of people you went to college with, studying public policy, and in the machinery, and one of them ending up in Congress, blah, blah, blah. This is the crew that we're expecting some kind of a rational action to come out of, okay, when money is thrown at it, okay? Money gets thrown at these people, and you're expecting some kind of thing to happen other than just more bureaucracy. Anyways, I interrupted you there, but I just wanted to kind of... Yeah.
No, but again, the usual talking point, rather the usual issue is, or the way that they do this, the strategy rather, is they say, okay, Black men are being killed by policemen, Black men are being killed by vigilantes, Black men, like this. You know what? We need a BLM. All right, so let's get the BLM going. That's great. But then when all is said and done, it's the same strategy. None of the money, well, maybe not none of the money, but such a low percentage of the money actually benefits people that are like the folks that they supposedly had generated all of this momentum based on.
Mhm.
Straight black men. So straight black men get nothing, but LGBTQ gets tightened up, and then later on, and it's the usual thing. You try to tell people, look, you should look at this and be very cautious. But then it's like everybody's in the hysteria and everybody's, oh, BLM, oh, you just, why don't you know when you've won, and stuff like this. They're telling you stuff like this. And then the leader, of BLM comes out and says, oh yeah, this was never for black men. This was never for that. This was always for, this is for women. This is never for black men and boys. Yeah. And then you just look at the money. Where did the money go? Yeah, it goes to those kind of causes because that's what, it's a shell game. You raise the interest based on something that you can get a lot of support for, something that's, visceral, something that's in your face, and then, yeah. And then, then they pull the switcheroo. And as I was saying before, like Larry says, when you use force, so you're taxing folks, you convince them that, this is going to be the good thing and we need to do this and all like this. If they're shown to be wrong, they can't just apologize because they'll be on the hook for that. That's evidence of guilt. No, they have to double down. That's the only thing you can do if you're in that situation. If you have coerced someone, you cannot apologize. You must double down. And that's what they've been doing. And we keep falling for the same strategy. And this way, and what this guy is talking about, he's talking about that very same thing. And I've heard so many folks that have been involved nearby, been near to the reins of power, as it were, in a lot of these kinds of organizations. And they come out saying the same thing. The money doesn't go where they say it's going to go. And even the stuff like, and I'm not going to use anyone's names right now, but we probably know, like, around the holiday season, there's a way that you can supposedly give to the poor that is like at every department store. I'm not going to say anything else. The folks probably already know what I'm talking about.
A charity, okay, that you can give to during Christmas or around the holiday season.
Right. Right. So when you actually look at how much of that money actually goes, I mean, now, okay, maybe 100% get go, but if only like 30% is going, then it's like, come on, man. Like, what is the point in this? This is just like a job for you. You found a way to make money, but you're trying to convince people that I don't know. It's the same. It's the same thing. You can see the stuff around the corner, and at some point, it's like, can you really not see that this is happening? Do you see how they're lining up on the line? Do you see, look, they don't even have any wide receivers in. Look, it's all jumbo package. They're going up the middle. You can't see this. What's happening? I don't know. But they'll yell at you. See, they will yell at you for calling it out. When you point it out, look, this is what's happening. Look, they're going to run the ball up the middle. Look, it's coming up the middle. Oh, you need to learn how to, to know when you're ahead. You've been so, as a black man in America, you've been so, I understand, you've been so beat down that you don't know when somebody's trying to do something for you. It's like, hey, really? Oh,
all right.
Right. I'm sorry, man.
No, all good. I mean, first thing we've been highlighting here, as far as the reasons why that money doesn't get where it's supposed to go in this particular case, besides the fact that things don't tend to have the ends, the stated ends, especially the motivation. Okay, there's a reason why these political parties have a quote unquote base, right? You know, it's kind of what you step on to do whatever you're gonna do. So that whole dynamic is going on. The whole dynamic of the inefficiency of government is going on, and then there's also this dynamic of the bureaucracy, whom is incentivized to treat the problem as opposed to cure the problem. And it is a system, okay, and it only all it requires is a little bit of shutting of your eye while you're there, a little bit of just kind of ignoring certain things and going along to get along and playing your part within the bureaucracy, right? That's all it requires of you. It's not going to require you to chop off any heads, right? We're not going to require you to sacrifice. There's no blood here. You don't have to stab somebody in the back. But, just kind of relax and go along and say the things you're supposed to say. I agree with our diversity and inclusion creed over here. Sign that. Put your hand over your chest the right times, and we'll be good. We're good? Okay, cool. So that's how the cookie crumbles, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go.
Used as the bait for attracting programs and relief, but when the benefits came, it went to middle class blacks like myself, and not to the people in whose name it was demanded.
Okay, let me just interrupt for a minute, but you were telling us about your background. I want you to continue.
You know why that is?
I just want to.
Why is that?
That's because the real poor folk, they're not the voters.
Well, that's another. They're neither the voters nor the organizers nor the many other things. They're not the people that I asked us to imagine that got those degrees and then did that. And that's not the poor people. Plus, there are other reasons which I'm sure they'll get to. There are other things. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. That's the thing. They're not the voters. The reason they tightened up the middle class. Right. So, the ones that didn't really need it per se. I mean, it's a nice benefit. It's good. It's because they're the voters, and they're going to tend to vote the same folks in. There you go.
Pause for a moment and ask, because these years in the 1960s, the years of Great Society and equal opportunity programs, these are formative. This is a formative period. The beginning of the expansion of welfare, and a lot of people would say that welfare dependency was not a healthy thing for the social fabric of the African-American community. The beginning of the transformation of the civil rights movement from a universalist, I have a dream speech kind of movement into a Black Power movement. And, I was going to ask you what you thought about Malcolm X, how he factored in these years, because these are the very years when his ministry was powerful. And because I think that relates, and excuse me for interrupting you, I want to hear your story about the contemporary time, because some of those same fissures I think I see in African-American leadership and voice, even in the present day. So, how'd you react to the radicals of your time? I'm talking about the Black radicals, the Stokely Carmichaels.
There was a time that I was a part of them, but what was very important at that time, Glenn, is the quality of the debate within the Black community. We had Dr. King, I Have a Dream. You had Malcolm X, who was challenging. You had the Black Panther Party, who were insurrectionists. You had the Republic of New Africa that said we should have a separate state within. There was vigorous debate within the Black community. Even the civil rights movement fractured on the issues of whether we should engage in civil disobedience. The lawyers in Atlanta believed that we should seek redress to the courts, but the students at Greensboro said, no, we want to demonstrate. And so there was a lot of healthy fracturing of the community as we sought our way forward. When Dr. King merged the civil rights movement.
Two things to note about this guy so far: being amongst and in many groups, talking about being part of the Black radicals, part of civil rights organizations, part of non-governmental organizations, part of government organizations to help, and so on and so forth. And but generally liking the diversity of the views and the richness of the argumentation back then. Presumably now it's been reduced. But let's go.
With the peace movement, he was called a communist by Carl Rowan, the liberal journalist for the Washington Post. but Dr. King prevailed. And so, but there was rigorous debate, but there's also standards of behavior as well. You could not be a participant in the civil rights movement if you were drunk or if you were rude to people. We had standards of conduct. The reason.
Now this is starting. We're starting to move towards the area here, and we'll let them go there. We'll let them go where they're obviously going. Because when we say, hey, the money is not getting to the poor, okay, there are certain things that start to come up, such as, okay, we talk about the bureaucratic part. Okay, besides that, is there such a bureaucracy that could solve the poor problem, right? That's it. Okay, cool. Now, set up the perfect bureaucracy, 100% efficient. Could it solve the poor problem? Or is there something else? Is it a spiritual revitalization and awakening of the culture that needs to happen, right? Is it standards, for example? Now, we're going there slowly by talking about standards, right? Okay. And before he mentioned, hey, the community, and this was last week, but he said, the community I grew up in wasn't a great community in terms of economically, but had 2 parents in the household, right? That kind of thing. And then now he's talking about also standards, which will lead us to a place, Dr. Thunder, which I want you to think about. Don't answer it yet. But there's a question of scalability when it comes to the question of, saving the souls out there and saving the culture out there, saving, it's a question of standards and spiritual, whatever it may be. This is a question of scalability. It's like, okay, cool. Yeah. You and your pastors, yes, you're doing great work and you're saving them 2 and 3 and 10 at a time. But is that scalable? And you can live a great and fulfilling life doing that. But is that scalable? Okay. But let's not just think about it.
The reason that Rosa Parks was chosen because she had middle class values. But what I witnessed, Glenn, that disappointed me, that caused me to leave, was on the whole issue of forced busing for integration. I felt it was wrong. I felt it was anti-Black. So, and I felt that we should be, and so I left on that, but also I led demonstrations outside of a pharmaceutical company. And when they desegregated, they hired 9 Black PhD chemists. And when we asked these brothers and sisters to join us, they said, we got these because we were qualified, not because of what you all did. So I realized that there was a huge class split in the Black community. And so after that happened 2 or 3 times, I left the movement, and then I watched how our Black politicians morphed into, our Black civil rights leaders became Democratic politicians at a time when the poverty program was expending $22 trillion. So they.
Okay, cool. So here's the thing. So interesting. Why is it that the people, okay, the middle class benefits when the money is intended for the poor, okay? And then you started to give your answer, right? And we see how it's going. But then these people say that even this guy just said that even the civil rights people, okay, or the activists, let's say, that the activists even became attracted to that whole politics, just get me the money thing. And I'm not saying this because it's a surprise. I'm not pointing it out as though, oh my God, the angels fell. It's like even angels fall. So, nonetheless, human beings, when there's money around, of course, that is it's like a swarm. Okay, now he even mentioned that. Look, it's not even just the case that governments are inefficient, that bureaucracies are kind of this self-perpetuating organism, and it's a go along to get along thing, and blah blah blah. Things are not going to work out, and okay, but that even the people whom are well-meaning, once they get into the political realm and a realm where that now says, okay, let's form this engine here to help. Okay, you even gave an example of a charity, but let's form this engine here to help. That people get sucked away into that it just becomes a money game, and they get their jobs now. And he just said that I got my job, had nothing to do with y'all niggas, right? I'm good. So, any thoughts about that?
So here's the heart of this thing is we are trying to, with government, disprove a biblical principle. Okay?
What? That
We
the
are
poor will always
with
be
the
with
power
us?
of government. The poor will always be with you.
Okay. The and here's the thing about it. The biblical aspect of it, I like to put that category as like this is like the common sense tradition. You don't have to ask. It's been preloaded, coming from thousands of years of just wisdom, knowledge, and evolution. Okay, that's that. Okay, it tells you that there. But not only does it tell you that there, okay, that the poor will always be with us, that inequality is a deep kind of crazy problem, right? But your own eyes, okay, can tell you that the roots, right, the roots of inequality are deeper than whatever little tweak in the system you think you're going to do. If inequality has always existed in all different kinds of societies, okay, and all
No.
different times.
You're giving people too much credit, though. The issue here is, again, apparently we have a bunch of blind people because they keep running the same play, the jumbo package, running it up the middle for 30 and 40 yards per time. And everybody sees the same thing, but they seem to think that, but this time it will be different. And then if it's never different, it's always the same. And you know, I think that's part of the reason why I think we have to unplug from this. Enough of us have to unplug from this two-party foolishness. Enough of us have to
okay.
we have to unplug from that and say, okay, now maybe it's still going to be a Democrat or a Republican in there. Maybe that is okay. Maybe that's really what's going to happen. But we at least need to pull our vote out and at least act like we're going to do something different.
Yeah. You gotta play the game. You gotta actually have a threat. You gotta have moves and stuff like that. You can't just be a deadbeat on the board, guaranteed little. You can't be taken for granted. In other words,
and not fall for the same stuff. Like,
Mhm.
we're gonna we got another government program.
It's not so. And here's the thing about it is now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, it's a tough one for people to actually get, because they just think, okay, money goes, government pumps money in, that's good for me, and it's going to get to me, and that's number one. And then number two, and then the other thing about the me thing is, the poor people, again, they're not the ones voting, so they're not the ones designing the programs, they're not the ones that are going to get it. But the idea of how human nature tends to, okay, let's go to poor versus broke, okay? There's a difference, right? Now, and I want to, because there's going to be some pushback here, right? We got to play devil's advocate maybe for a second or two, okay? To say, hey, are you telling me that government programs don't benefit this, that, the other? Are you telling me that you're never taking advantage of any kind of government benefit? Are you blah, blah, blah? Okay, well, let's take them up on it. Seriously. We're not saying that government programs don't help anybody. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say that right adjacent to those people you call poor, these other people call broke. Okay, so now brokenness is a necessary condition for being poor, but it's not sufficient, right? There are other things that you need to be poor. Okay, to stay broke, for example, is part of poverty. Okay,
Right.
There's a big difference between, okay, just I'm broke right now, because I'm sure everyone's been broke. Everyone's been young, and everyone's been broke, and all that stuff. Okay, but poverty is a different thing. Staying broke is where poverty starts to creep in. Okay?
I like this. We should come up with like a the simple man's lexicon
There you go.
to economics. And
Economics,
so,
yes,
you know,
like
and then that could be in there. The difference
exactly.
between broke and
Broke and poor, like staying broke versus being broke, very different. Very whoa. That makes all the difference in the world. So basically, the government programs do help broke people, okay, whom don't have that poverty spirit. And we did have a stream, and maybe in the future we should bring back and incorporate and remind about what exactly that poverty spirit means, okay, where we actually looked at, okay, these people, what does it look like? I think we use people like Uncle Joe and Uncle Bob, and what does that family do? What are their values? In other words, the people whom kind of stay poor, right? Generation after generation. What are the kind of decisions that they make? What are the kind of lifestyles that they have? What are the kind of networks? What are the kind of skills? Because basically, the broke, whom don't have the poor mindset, okay, they're going to leverage these opportunities into skills, into networks, okay? They're going to be able to make hay out of whatever the situation is. And the same thing with the rich. And that's why the rich always get richer, is because generally they know how to make hay, and they got the cash to be able to make the hay, okay, in different kinds of situations. Okay, so programs help broke people, but poverty and the kinds of people that this guy is working with, okay, that we're talking about here, the kinds of people that end up in juvenile hall and the poor, okay, not just the broke. These programs don't help them, is what the argument here is. And then Dr. Thunder is reminding us that, hey, the fact that the inequality is a deep problem, as Dr. Peterson would put it, that the poor would always be with us, as the Bible would put it, the Pareto principle, which is also in the Bible too, and all the common sense, everything else telling you that, look, this is not just something, this is not capitalism, because in every system there's inequality. This is not even have to do with people, because in all kinds of other mammalian kingdoms all kinds of social animals, even trees have different heights and different, like, it's not it is not a uniquely human problem that can be assumed to be uniquely or easily solved. But anyways, let's continue here. Okay, let's continue here to review this. Shout out.
Became mayors and administrators of those funds.
So again, these particular, civil rights people, the activists out there agitating, they got into the political game. Okay, they were like, whoa, there's a whole lot more money here. Oh, you mean I could be talking the same jive but getting, getting paid fat and flying, and I want me some of that.
Civil rights leaders became Democratic politicians at a time when the poverty program was expending $22 trillion. So they became mayors and administrators of those funds. I saw the corruption occur.
Excuse me again for interrupting, and I just want to, there's so much information that's coming out. You left, okay? That's the first thing. You left the movement and struck out in a new direction. You were on the other side of the busing debate from the civil rights community for reasons that you thought even had to do with being anti-Black. You saw a class issue in the civil rights struggle. As you came to see that people on the streets were not always the ones getting the benefits, people in the suites were the ones that were getting the benefits.
Absolutely.
And you saw a bureaucracy emerge, institutionalized, dug-in kind of profession of advocating on behalf of Black people, but not really being accountable to Black people.
Absolutely. There's right on my wall, I have.
She belongs to the suites.
Belongs to the suites. Okay, so I believe here the question that's being asked by Amethyst is a breakdown. She's probably new here, generally speaking. I think she's not. A breakdown of that whole broke thing, because a staying broke thing and the poverty spirit thing. Okay, one quick and easy way to put it is that someone who has the poverty spirit does not really believe that they can change things. Okay, that's the main thing. That's what makes it a permanent condition. Okay, now there's a psychological component to it. There's a laziness component. There's a lack of networks component. There's I never saw my uncle component. There's so many different components that make it such that this person lives in a kind of a box where he can't do anything. I always talk about the Mario Brothers thing, right? But that the growth mindset, broke but not broke forever mindset is, I'm starting out as Mario level 1, okay? At least I got an A and a B button. I can jump, I can dock. I don't have everything yet, okay? But I can at least run, hide, jump, okay, dodge, swim, go underneath, those kinds of things. That's the main difference between, and hence the person who.
Yeah, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
Wow. Reference, good one. The point being, okay, the kind of person that looks at themselves as though that the world is a forum for action, they can actually make moves and make changes, are the people that will then parlay any situation, including government program situation, to their benefit. Okay, they're going to take advantage of, shall we say, unemployment checks and maybe government grants, or maybe even food stamps for a while they're getting stuff together, right? And they will take that, they will move on. They're not going to stay there for long, whatever that particular station is. And that's because they have a belief that, okay, cool, I just need to do these steps for this not long. The people who stay there, for whatever reason, they don't think that they can move things in the world. And they keep on, to Dr. Thunder's point, every 4 years or every so often, you have the politicians coming in to tell those people in the bottom, or to use them as a photo op, right, as a prop, saying, you see, we will do stuff, and this is why you're down here. It's not because you don't play Mario Brothers like you should, but it's because of whomever they're pointing at today. Maybe it's white supremacy, maybe it's the global corporate elite, maybe it's the banks, maybe whoever is keeping you down today, right? That kind of a thing. Anyways, I think I over-explained it, and she got it now.
Yeah, she says, okay, I got it. Yeah.
Have a framed headline from the Washington Post, October 29, 1965, written by reporter Bill Raspberry. And the banner headline is, "Poor Negroes are not benefiting from the gains of the civil rights movement."
Nope.
And that has driven me from that time to today. And that is profoundly true, because of the $22 trillion spent over 50 years on the poverty programs, 70 cents of every dollar goes not to the poor, but those who serve the poor.
Okay, so here's that again. He's talking about, remember, we talked about efficiency is a very simple input-output thing, okay? How much work am I putting in, and how much energy am I getting out? We know that the world works such that you can never get 100% input and 100% out. That's not how the universe works, okay? It's always loss, it's always entropy. Something's got to happen, okay? Something's got to give, okay? Something's got to happen, okay? Now, he's saying 70% here, okay? Let's hear that again. 70% goes to the bureaucracy itself to keep the bureaucracy running. Because when you hear all these, this many billions, it's like, well, yeah, they have buildings and air conditioning and many different offices and salaries and things. Yes, okay.
Programs, 70 cents of every dollar goes not to the poor, but those who serve the poor.
Comment, Dr. Thunder?
Yeah, look, man, I'm just telling you that, it's a jumbo package. They bringing the same dude in, they're running up the middle, but, we're going to just let them keep doing it. But I do have a new point also. So, in the Black community, and we're really kind of the only community that falls for this garbage, right? This question, well, where are your Black leaders? Where are the Black leaders on this issue? Where are the Black leaders? How come they don't talk about the white leaders? Where are the white leaders on this issue? Or where are it's all the Black folks are the only ones that fall for that total foolishness. Where are the Black leaders? As if I need somebody else to tell me what to do or what to think. It's total garbage, because what it does is, okay, look, here's the strategy. So if there was a sort of a strategy, a specific strategy, this would be the one. This would be the strategy that I would use if I wanted to make sure that I could secure as much money for myself as possible. This is the strategy I would use if I was, in and around government. I would convince Black people who have a, 1.7 trillion. We spend 1.7 trillion per year on total foolishness, by the way. Total foolishness. So we just spend all kind of money. Okay. So I would convince Black folks that they need leaders. Now, you can't say it directly. You can't say Black people need leaders like that, because that sounds too condescending or something, right? So what you do is you ask the question, where are the Black leaders? Where are the Black leaders, right? So then what happens is, if there is a leadership vacuum. You suck in, some phony balonies, and you offer them enough money to make it hard for them to, toe the line, right? So then they start to become part of what the problem is, because there's a lot of bread in it. And, they want to they want to be able to send their, kids to college, to Ivy League schools. And, they want to be able to do all that stuff. Right. So they, fall for the same okie doke. They're trying to get their piece of the American dream and, all of that. Now they just found out what their pathway to the American dream is.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this all of this hard talk I was doing about how, the pro-life thing, and, we need to, make sure that, and actually even the talk that a lot of civil rights leaders had against birth control. I mean, these cats weren't just against, Noit Roba. There was also against birth control, right? Because they saw that if we could produce more of us, we potentially would become a larger political power, right? And if we're going to vote the same way in general, there could be, I don't know, 40, 50 million more of us here by now, if it hadn't been for, X, Y, and Z. So what you do is you hand select the folks that are going to be the leaders, right? You make sure that they don't, necessarily get caught for some usual stuff that anybody would get thrown under the jail for. You make sure. And so now they owe you something, and okay, all right. It's not nefarious. It's going after the dollar. It's all about money. It's all about getting as much money and power as possible. It's not like you have to be desiring specifically to do other people harm. See the thing. One of the reasons I think that people have a hard time grasping that this kind of strategy could be so effective, and it just ends up sounding like a conspiracy theory, is because in their head, they're thinking that you have to be some kind of evil person to participate in something like that. I'm saying you don't have to be an evil person per se. You just have to be a human being that is bought into a certain materialism and a certain sort of, and then, hey, here's the money. So it's easy to get you to transfer from a black nationalist like a Jesse Jackson to a racial integrationist, because the racial integrationist, that's where the money was, and it's not about, look, some of this is about a job. Some of this is about getting a job and being able to save money, for your children, save money for your children's children, right? Mm-hmm. So say, for instance, if all of the jobs dried up in the black nationalist sort of side of things, okay? But there's some of these other jobs, and they got some good salaries, and they're interested. And okay, I'm going to take one of these jobs, and at first, I'm still going to be fighting the power. Okay, I'm going to still be fighting the power. But you've been there for 5 years, 10 years. Oh, you start to see the bonuses. Hey, maybe this racial integrationist thing isn't that bad. It seems like, I don't know. So I don't think you have to be a terrible person to be one of these folks that we're talking about, that changed, that start singing a different song and that are participating in the system that is actually the problem. I get it.
Shout out to Black Man being brutally honest. Thank you very much for the $20 super chat. Very generous of you. Okay, that is sponsorship category, ladies and gentlemen, putting you guys to shame. Go ahead, click that like button, click the subscribe button if you haven't already, click the bell button twice. All right.
Yeah.
Says salute to Iko Gammon. Thank you very much, Black Man Being Brutally Honest. Kev, check his show out there. Okay. So before we continue the video here real quick, okay, a quick kind of overview about the whole landscape we've been at. Starting last week, we talked about what could ethnic interests be, okay, and how they represent it, and what are the best ways now this week of making sure that the outcomes that we want get there. And a big portion of this is the question of the poor, how to help the poor, especially in certain communities, like, for example, amongst the African American community is overrepresented, you would say, amongst the poor, right? So how does one go about doing that right? And how does one, and so far we've been seeing all the things that go wrong, the inefficiencies, the incentives that make it such that, you know, you are there to provide treatment and not cure. You're there to just perpetuate the bureaucracy so you can, as you said, pay your bills, you know, pay your mortgage, send your kids to college and retire. That's what these people are trying to do. But the question still remains, what is the solution? And you said that these people have a goal that is a wrong goal, which is they're trying to eradicate poverty, which is a wrong goal, which I agree. Can't do that.
Yeah.
One could seek something, for example, called justice, which tries to create the most even playing field possible, right? When it comes to opportunity, okay? Equality of opportunity, they would say, right? But the idea of eradicating poverty perhaps is the issue. But let's play a little bit more of this to see what kinds of solutions, because this guy has been an activist and a person on the ground doing work. What was his impact? What does he think works?
They ask which problems are fundable, not which ones are solvable. Another fact, Glenn, only 2 out of 10 whites with college education works for government. 6 out of 10 blacks with college education works for government. So our Black middle class is anchored in the public sector that is responsible for and depends upon having large numbers of dependent people.
Overrepresentation of the African American community in government in these particular bureaucracies. Okay.
And he said something, that is the key. It's not what problems are solvable, it's what problems are fundable. That's the key right there.
College education works for government.
It's because it's fundable to keep on saying end poverty. It doesn't matter whether it can be solved or not. I can just keep on saying some vague BS about add justice in front of everything. You know, we need fruit justice. I think we need microphone, we need table justice, we need roundabout, we need,
reproductive justice.
Whatever justice, beer justice, all kinds of justice. Really? And we can fund that. I say justice and you give me money, I'll just say justice and justice and justice. More justice.
Government. 6 out of 10 blacks with college education works for government. So our Black middle class is anchored in the public sector that is responsible for and depends upon having large numbers of dependent people to serve.
Oh, okay, well, hold on just a minute, Bob. So you know this, when I was coming up, working at the post office was one of the best jobs that a Negro could have. That the impact on Black communities of professionals, social workers, teachers, lawyers who work for the government has been very significant. You can't possibly be indicting public employment across the board with respect to its impact on the African American community, can you?
It's not a matter of indicting, it's a matter of facing the reality of what it is. I don't care how compassionate you may be about helping people, but if your career depends upon having someone else dependent, Glenn, that is a reality we must discuss. You don't have to attribute any blame for anybody, but we need to face it and say, what can we do that will ensure that middle class people make a decent living, but how can we do it in such a way it's not harmful to other people?
Well, I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that. I mean, but look how you turn the tables. You made the fact that I'm trying to help the homeless into an indictment of my motive. You've now said that because I get a salary for helping the homeless, I'm dependent on their being homeless. And I don't think that's fair. It may or may not be true in any particular instance, but the very fact that I get my salary from helping people doesn't mean that I have no interest in seeing them set free from their condition.
Absolutely. In other words, what I'm saying that we are locked in an institutional arrangement that causes good, compassionate people to do bad things with regard to their neighbors. that we don't have to attribute denigrating them for it, but we need to face it and say, what it is.
And this is exactly what I was saying.
For instance, if a child comes into foster care, and that only 3% of these kids have problems.
Yeah, I mean, the point of, incentives, I think, is the key one that we're making for the past 40 minutes, right? The point of incentives of this particular group of people. And it's not a question of, does it have to be bad, or you have to be good, or do I really have to see some kind of grand scheme behind it? Does it have to be some kind of grand conspiracy? It's like, no, people are just trying to feed their kids.
Psychological dysfunction. But as they move from home to home by policy and they deteriorate, the reimbursement rate goes up. And so the more we deteriorate, the more valuable they are as a commodity. That's a reality, Glenn, that we've got to face without trying to attribute blame to anybody. But we can't solve the problem if we don't face it. But I really think, look, I worked inside of the Urban League for 5 years.
There's a weird conflation here too. So the same issue, the same point that we've been making for 40 minutes. But there's a strange conflation, it seems, that happens when people try to separate these issues. Blaming someone versus just admitting that this system is not efficient. It's as if people are putting those in the same bucket. So if I say these government programs are so inefficient, what they hear is that the people that are, passing this legislation, the people that are advocating for it are bad people, or that they have some, funky motive or something. It's so you can't criticize the policy without it becoming some sort of personalized issue. And the thing is that that's dangerous, because the whole purpose of criticizing a policy is so that you can improve it, so that it will work better, so that it will actually more effectively accomplish the stated goal, right? So it puts you in a really funky position. But I mean, that's basically it.
Yeah. So let's see here. Snuggle says something, and I think I wanted to. So the point being made here specifically is about poverty, and if you're overrepresented in poverty, there is a notion here that it is not just about some little nudge financially, opportunity-wise. That it tends to be the case that there's something more cultural going on, right? However, it is the case that if you're trying to get a group moving forward, if they fix some of their hang-ups and detach themselves, for example, from a certain kind of underclass identity, okay? Because there is an issue here that I see sometimes of certain groups of people, certain ethnicities identifying with underclass, okay? And let me make this clear, okay? This is something I've seen with my 2 eyes, heard with my own ears, and observed ever since I came to the United States, where African Americans just accept poor and African American and kind of underclass and African American to kind of go hand in hand, and they say it to get like as though it was kind of one and the same thing, and Joe Biden, I believe, made a mistake once, and he talked about I forget what he did. He did a little slip where he started out saying something about poor kids, and then he replaced it with black kids. You know what I mean? Like, you start out the sentence. So, but the point is, it's not just them. So there's an acceptance of a certain kind of underclass. There's a cultural aspect, blah blah blah. But if you get all those figured out, then you can take advantage of whatever government programs are there. Okay. The idea is, we also talked earlier that these programs help broke people as long as they don't have the poverty mindset. But it's not going to help poor people, so to speak. But anyways, let's go ahead with the super chat. Thank you very much. Mind reading the super chat there, Dr. Thunder?
Sure. Give me some good idea here, Dr. Thunder. Human equals evil's person. The humans have wicked heart. That's not exactly what I was saying, but that is true. That is true. The point I was making is that you don't have to be a morally bankrupt, reprehensible, you know, Hitlerian sort of status, kind of, you know, moral depravity, Ted Bundy kind of person.
The thing about it is, yeah, even if you were, let me put it even more strongly, even if you were, it wouldn't make a difference, because there's the thing, how these are systematic problems where you have this massive bureaucracies. It doesn't matter what you're secretly thinking of in your heart. Like, it doesn't even matter. Okay, these things are going to be pushing in certain ways. Okay, certain tendencies are going to be happening. It's going to be towards the money, towards the comfort, towards not upsetting the apple cart, towards not sticking out and being the nail that sticks out and getting hammered down. All those things. Byzantine general problem that you talked about, Dr. Thunder, as well as other things just happen in these kinds of situations. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, they're getting heated here. They're talking about people and their jobs being dependent on other people suffering and whatnot. But let's see.
You know, just because you pump and dump doesn't mean that you're evil. You know, that's basically what we're saying. You know,
there you go.
Years. This is something no one's ever reported. Nixon gave the Urban League national $93 million when he was president to address poverty. $93 million. Think about that in today's dollars. The Ford Foundation, Carnegie, Rockefeller Brothers also contributed massively to that movement. And then ask yourself what happened. I worked there at the end, and I can tell you what happened.
Yeah, I'm sure that there are a lot of instances where money was thrown at problems and nothing really came of it, especially coming out of the late 60s and the early 70s. But I'm wondering how, what you're talking about, I was just cataloging, and as you were talking about your career, you know, your how you came to where you are, that you broke from the civil rights movement, that you were very uncomfortable about busing because you thought it kind of undermined African-American autonomy. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but that you became very suspicious of the welfare state. So where are you now? What does this come to?
Okay, let me just make this point, because that's in 1973, I was sent by the Urban League to Boston to monitor the case of busing when that was being debated before Judge Garrity, right? Judge Garrity asked the people suffering the problem in Mattapan, what do they want? There were months of meetings. The grassroots leaders and parents said, we want to strengthen neighborhood schools, give us a disproportionately more money per capita so we can improve our schools and create centers of excellence. But the lawyers told Judge Garrity, the middle class guys from Harvard and other, who did not have their children on their buses, told Judge Garrity, to hell with what the neighborhood people want, bust them. Not a damn scholar or lawyer had their children on those buses. It was low income people. And white parents said, bust them into these schools, they'll graduate as dumb as our kids, because you were moving them from a superior black high school into an inferior white school in the name of integration. I debated this before.
All right. More forced integration type talk. Okay, and now as we start to lose, we start to get short on time here, and we'll probably continue next week, because it seems like this is an inexhaustible video here. But let's get to the what is to be done aspect. Let's see if the idea that, hey, if it is not money, if it's not bureaucracy, if it's not a government program, if it's not even a charity, if it's not even civil society and activism, because these people too will get funneled into these the political machinery, right? And the money machinery. If it's not that, then what? Okay, then, or if the poor would always be with us, then what's the point of doing all this work about, saving one person at a time? Okay, now, Dr. Thunder, I asked you to remember something. I said the scalability problem, okay? So I would already go ahead and assume that you don't think that the approach of, tending to the flock, if you will, solving the cultural, behavioral, the moral issue, solving the spiritual issue underneath this, why people don't consider themselves to be Mario, right? Why they can't move, why they're stuck. Okay, what has possessed them to be in that situation? Now, we know that it is not scalable, that you're not going to solve everybody's going to now be, you're going to create heaven. No. But what is the point of doing that then? Why, if the poor would always be with us, Dr. Thunder, okay, why don't we just say to hell with it? F this. Why do all this fellowship stuff and helping the poor stuff and caring? I should just get from my air conditioned room into my air conditioning car, put the steel bulletproof up in my Tesla truck, and go to the next city.
Hey, that sounds pretty good. No, no. Yeah, it is a okay. So understand that there's a difference between um doing things
Glenn, I'm
that
saying to you,
will doing things that will tend to promote poverty,
Mhm.
okay, and accepting that the poor will always be with us,
Gotcha.
okay. So you know, if you can show that there are certain policies uh, that are that are facilitating poverty, that are
Or at least
making
they're facilitating grift by the middle class. They're facilitating waste within the government by sucking money into places to solving problems that are insoluble. They're facilitating all kinds of bad things, even if they're not even making anyone more poor. Let's say
right.
even they're still facilitating all kinds of BS going on. Plus, there may be actual policies that are there, including, let's say, for the Roe v. Wade thing. Because again, we started out last week talking about ethnic political interest, and you kind of were able to say from your point of view there is the Roe v. Wade issue, the Title IX issue, and then there's this forced integrationist issue that I think
Yep.
that's kind of your triangle there to help kind of within which you understand the landscape of ADO's interests, right? So I understand what you're saying now when you say, okay, cool, I'm going to do certain things that don't exacerbate certain problems. I'm going to agitate for or say remove certain things, you know, tell people, hey, don't get lost on Instagram or don't do this, don't do that. I'm still going to tell people the right things to do, right? Is
Right.
that essentially the answer of the problem to the question that just because I know that the world is unfair, right? And that numbers are going to turn up, that they're going to always be inequality, doesn't mean that when I see wrong, I shouldn't say something is wrong. When I
Right.
see
Right.
somebody going the wrong way, and okay, cool, I should make a YouTube video saying, this is the right way, even though I know it might only reach only a small percentage of people, for example. And as always is the case, right? When you make the good stuff, people tend not to watch it. But we come in here with not that I'm saying this about this video, but you know what I mean. The audience,
Yeah.
that is. Go ahead.
Yeah. So where was I at? I totally lost
Well,
my
we want let's hear what he has to say for the next few minutes in terms of like what he might say about what is to be done. If he let's see.
you there are two standards, which is troublesome to me. All of Nicole Hannah Jones and all of those people who are writing in 1619, most of them do not live in these troubled communities, and yet.
Well, the 1619 project, basically, I'm not going to go into it, but for anyone who's not aware of it, it was an attempt to basically rewrite American history as being basically about slavery, right? That's kind of what it's always all about. It's not about all these other things going on, and that turned out to be historically inaccurate and not well researched and heavily kind of biased in its approach and just unnecessary. Like, why do you have to do that? Anyways.
They have a different level of expectation for their own children. She even said that her husband and her can provide whatever is missing in their environment. That is a expectation. But I find it troubling when we say to the Black community that your problems are all external and you are exempt from any personal responsibility for controlling your own behavior, even with this pandemic.
So there's again, we talked about standards. That's when we started to creep into it. Like we're talking about all the things that are not working, all these things that he's trying, and he's going here and he's going here, all these things, he's getting disappointed. The people are selling out left and right, selling out the money, getting their jobs, building their bureaucracies. The money's not getting where it should go. He's talked about standards. Now he's talking about personal responsibility, basically saying, hey, you cannot be telling the people that the problems are external. And that to the point I was addressing about Snuggles earlier, because maybe the case that all you have to do is solve maybe about 15% of the problem or 20% of the problem with the talk of should I just call it the culture talk, the spiritual talk, the personal responsibility talk, right? That all you need is to just get a few people out that way, okay? And then, because the world, the way
No.
physical things tend to work is through that principle of critical mass. There is a point when the building starts to crumble, and then nothing else can be done about it, right? And it's nowhere near 100%. You don't need nowhere near 100% of anything in order to get critical mass, in order to get certain processes started. So the point is, if you're overrepresented in certain groups, let's say like the poor, and there is an aspect of this poverty thing which we've described has to do with a spirit, okay, which means the stay broke spirit, not just the broke spirit, but the staying broke spirit. If there's an aspect of it that has to do with you changing your behavior and taking personal responsibility, if we get enough of you out of there, then we can get maybe the whole group moving in the right direction. So goes the argument. But anyways, what more?
Reverend Barber and Cole Jones was on MSNBC. The whole time they talk about systemic racism, inequality. Somehow those were the reasons that you have the disproportionate number of blacks who are dying from it. They refuse to apply the same standards to the black community as they're applying to the rest of the country. We're saying the way that you can control the pandemic is through personal choices that you make. You have got to control where you go, how you interact with people. But if you were to take the
okay, Bob, let me interrupt. I hear you, and the audience hears you, man. Again, pushing back because that's my job, but also I think I really do want to push back a little bit. There's two things here. One of them is, what do we do as black people? And you're right. The constant litany of helplessness, of learned helplessness that comes from these people, that makes us baubles at the end of a string, pushed by the historical forces this way or that, and having no free agency or capacity to make our own futures, our own lives, is complete bullshit. It's extremely dangerous, and it must be opposed. I don't want anybody to misunderstand me about that. But there are two things here. One of them is, what should black people do? How should black people be? What is our vision? Who are we? And at the end of the day, if you ask me, that's a spiritual question, okay? Whether you ascribe to this religion or that, that's a question about meaning, about the deepest existential questions that confront a reflective human being and a reflective person of African descent. There's that question, and I agree with you about that. And this is why I was asking you about Justice Thomas, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but there's also the political question. The political question is not what should we African Americans do, it's what should we Americans do. Now, you cannot begrudge Ben Barber or Hannah Jones for wanting to put a thumb on the scale on behalf of their people in the political conversation about what should be done. Now, the issue then would become, because they're addressing themselves to the entire country, what is to be done, okay? Now, if you've got something better to suggest about that than Hannah Jones and Barber, that should be the thing that we should be talking about.
And I'd love to. Yeah, what they're advocating is the same thing that has failed for 40 years. Just vote Democratic, ask for more government programs, ask for reparations. You got millionaire football players who 7 years after they leave the league are broke. And you're going to tell us the problems of wedlock births and violence can be solved by giving more government programs or reparations? No. My solution is to go around what we do around the country, go into these drug-infested, crime-ridden neighborhoods and find healthy antibodies. The sickest part of the body, Glenn, attracts the strongest antibodies. What the Woodson Center does is go in these communities, find grassroots leaders who have the moral authority to be spiritual and moral mentors to their peers, and they create islands of excellence within. I have one that I tell people, go on 60 Minutes and type in Bertha Gilkey 60 Minutes. You will see an example that we help create. And there are about 5 or 6 other models of how self-development can occur from within the communities, reducing teen pregnancy, stopping the violence, transforming and redeeming people by the hundreds. So what we need to do as a nation is look for these strengths, islands of excellence, and invest in them. Some of you scholars need to show up and ask questions about capacity and not just do failure studies. But
I mean, he's right on it, man. He's nailing all the he's saying all this stuff.
So you don't disagree with him, and even though one knows that, by the way, this is not going to solve the whole solving the problem. Even sounds artificial. Like, if you can help, we all know that when we help one person, we live our lives from a first person perspective, and when you help one person, you feel good. You're not keeping a tally as to whether or not it has moved the ball on the poverty stats today, right? So, point being, doing the right thing also feels good, regardless of whether or not you know that the poor, quote unquote, would always be with us, right? That kind of a thing. So, but a little bit more here. He's running it down. He says, go in here and find islands of excellence. Okay, so we've promised you. We said, hey, why does the? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I do want to say something before I forget this again. And I said this on the Kosher Clinicians channel. Let's see here. It was probably this past Saturday. That's right. I was on his show this past Saturday, and I also did a show on his channel the prior Friday, a week and a day before this past Saturday. I did a show there too. Those are both really good shows, really good conversation. Now, there's a reason why. So this is to the point of, it does actually matter what people do. Now, I understood the point that you were making. It doesn't matter what you can have a terrible motivation. If the system is broken, one person within the system is not going to fix the system. If your job is just to basically defeat the machine, then if you have good intentions or nefarious intentions, it's not going to have any effect on how the machine runs. Okay, so I agree with that. But you also said the thing about how it's important. We're not saying ignore stuff that's wrong. You should still correct things. You should still point things out if you know it to be wrong. And the reason I think that is so important, and why I would extend that to sort of people publicly acknowledging when they've been wrong about something, why they were wrong about it, right? And then what they think now. See, that's important because it makes it much easier for people to follow the trail of breadcrumbs.
Rather than double down because you've already used coercion and now you're doubling down and blah, blah, blah.
Right. So if I you know what, I was a black nationalist, and I don't know, the racial integrationist thing just seemed like the thing, but now I see that there's a lot of issues. So what this guy is doing is exactly if there is a solution, which, I don't believe in a wholesale solution. What it is that he is doing right now, not just by discussing the specifics of what it is that he's doing and how his ideas are different than the sort of prevailing ideologies on the topic.
He's modeling the behavior that you're describing, right? He's modeling the behavior of changing ideas, showing you where he goes, the breadcrumbs, why he this
that's right. He said, look, I was wrong. I was involved in all of these different movements and I was wrong. I saw the issues with them, and this is why I don't think that anymore. This is why I have changed. This is why I've changed my perspective. If more, I don't even like to use the leaders thing, but if more of us would be willing to publicly do what it is that this guy is doing, this is where I was wrong. This is why I don't believe that anymore. This is what I'm thinking about now. These are some things that I didn't consider back then that I know now are the actual issues that matter. That's important, but people won't do that. And I'm not just talking about, the Wizard of Oz, the guy behind the curtain controlling the stuff. I'm not talking about that guy. I'm just talking about your average, regular, everyday person. I'm not even necessarily talking about pundits. I'm not necessarily talking about politicians. I'm not even necessarily talking about teachers. I'm just talking about any average regular person. If you have changed your perspective on something and you were quite vociferous and adamant about whatever position that was, it seems to me that you're doing society good, a goodwill. I mean, you're doing a good deed by sharing that. Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap this up. Okay. Right on time for this week. Okay. And again, what did we promise? We promised that we're going to talk about why the money doesn't get to where it's supposed to get to, why the money doesn't help the poor, why the programs don't help the poor. Okay. And it's not very, very, strange as to why that is the case, because there's inefficiency. Okay. Do we expect governments to be efficient? Right. We all know about the scandals and the charities, right? And that's about inefficiencies. That's about, them getting bloated in the bureaucracy and getting bloated with paying the CEO too much or whatever it may be. But these governments have this kind of fiat control over creation of bureaucracies, the siphoning of money to do X, Y, and Z. So you can imagine the kinds of inefficiencies that just kind of metastasize over there, right? And then they're incentivized to treat rather than cure the problem through no fault of their own. And this is where we spend the most time. Okay? We could spend like a good 50 minutes of our time here talking about the incentive structure and that the fact that, look, they don't have to be bad people, but this is the way the beast basically works. And we then talked a little bit about that broke versus poor thing, saying that, look, it will also be the case that the poor will not benefit from government programs because the poor tend not to be able to leverage situations into lifestyle choices and knowledge and networks and skills so that they can then build upon whatever they were given, so they can build upon opportunities or money that they were given. Okay. So if you're just slightly broke and then you need some government assistance, yeah, that's a great thing. It helps a lot of people, but government will not be spending as much money as it is spending on these programs if it was basically just to help the broke temporarily leave a particularly tough spot, right? So all these things come into play, right? And then the spiritual revitalization question, right, is a thing about that is worthwhile to say this is the right way, this is the right path, this is the right thing to do, form islands of excellence in his own words, right? And fund these particular islands of excellence within the community, people who have the moral standing to tell the people that this is the right way to go. And that is the only solution, even though you know that you're not under the utopian, shall we say, foolishness that poverty will be eradicated. They're going to be some kind of egalitarian, equal utopia. That's not what you're going for, but you're going for the focusing of the islands of excellence and saying, look, this is a spiritual problem. I'm going to solve it on the spiritual level, the cultural level, and all that kind of stuff. But we'll continue next week. Any closing thoughts, remarks, promotions, Dr. Thunder?
Yeah, I got a little bit to promote here. Let me change this so you can see a little better. Let's try this one. Yeah, so I had and let me move this out the way. And let me start this back. Yeah, I had a great interview with Bernard Fowler, and that's this over here. And Bernard is been a member of the Rolling Stones for about 35 years. He also sang with Herbie Hancock, and he's been on all kinds of records. Let me get rid of that. So, yeah, that was that just went up this morning. So, go and check that out. Conversations with Dr. Thunder, episode 195. And then also I've got a bunch of other stuff happening this week. This is the 45th annual Ohio State Jazz Festival, starts tomorrow. And so we've got concerts every night, 8 p.m., Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then a 6 p.m. show on Sunday. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, those will be concerts that I will post to my community tab. They're all live streamed, free concerts, bringing in some of the best and brightest, and so that's going to be really, really great. So and I'm creating some promotional stuff. I've got another image I'm going to probably post tonight, and then tomorrow I'll have another image that I post, and they'll be promoting the concerts that I'm involved with, which is the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday concerts. So anyhow, a lot of great stuff happening. And then Case Closed will be on Sunday. It's going to be on Ike's channel again. And then I think it's going to be on my channel probably 2 or 3 weeks in a row after that. But, we had a good show with Dana, with the data. And and she admitted some, what did she say? What was her admission? That, she only wants to get married if she can spend all of her husband's money or something. I can't remember what it was. I'm teasing. But actually, that's kind of is what she said, though. But I am teasing too. But yeah, we had a good talk. So anyhow, that's happening. Then of course we'll be back, getting it done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. I'm not going to have a Thursday night Thunder's Thoughts this week. But if you want to, you should go and check out the Thunder's Thoughts that I did this past week. Yeah. And that was a great show. That was about why young men are opting out of the dating market. And BGS Ibmore was on the panel and all kinds of stuff. It was a good show, and that video is performing really well. So you can go check that out. All right, but that's pretty much all I got.
All right. Peace. We are out.
Peace.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what's a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what was behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.